everyone, and welcome to Stories of Hope. My name is Christine Hotchkiss, and I'm your host. Here at Stories of Hope, I will give you stories of grief, healing, inspiration, transformation, and celebration of life. Just a little bit about myself. Today's show is about grief, one of the biggest topics that have been a difficult one to talk about. I'm a parent of loss. My daughter's name is Nicole Marie Brown. We were in an auto accident on New Year's Day 2007 in a family rollover accident. And the loss of a child, if you've experienced that, will change your life forever and your view of how you see life. I have a nonprofit as well, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, I'd like to introduce my guests. This is Ernie Jackson, LeAnn Holt, and Elizabeth Boisson. Ernie, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Well, I'm an author of 2 books. I am a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandparent. And my family lights up my world, and any way that I can help others with their journey, the transition of a loved one, I'm in. That's why I'm here now.
Thank you. LeAnn, tell us about you.
Well, I am like Ernie. Well, I'm not a husband. I am a wife. So I'm a wife and a mother and a grandma as well. I love being a grandma, and also experienced the transition, movement, relocation of my son to heaven when he was 16. So that has propelled me in a new journey. So I'm also an author, just about ready to launch my first book.
Exciting.
And have a nonprofit, so do quite a bit of public speaking.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth.
I'm also a mom, like LeAnn, and I have 4 children, 2 in spirit and 2 that are here. And one passed in 1991, my daughter, and one in 2009. And I feel very grateful to have a nonprofit that I co-founded with another Shining Light Dad, and his name is Mark Ireland, and so we're all part of that same organization, and I feel that it's wonderful to be able to meet other parents who are going through the same thing along the way, and to be able to possibly reach out and help them.
So as we know, grief is a very difficult topic of conversation, whether you're on our end with having to deal with it on a daily basis, thinking of our children every day, having those moments where we know that they're reaching out to us to keep us going, because there are days that we don't always want to keep going, but we find it because it is a memory of our children. Grief is also not just the loss of a loved one, it's also the loss of, I'll explain it, a loss of anything that you used to have and had and no longer have. So Stories of Hope will continue with other stories of grief. But for today, we're going to stick with the loss of a child, because for us, it's our lives. So the one thing I always mention to people when they talk about losing a child is say their name. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask my guests to say their children's name and who they are in their life, not just who they were to other people, but who they still are. Because even though our children are gone, physically, they're never gone from the inside, our hearts and our minds. So let's start with LeAnn.
Andy. I love it, especially when I'm out and about, and I was just recently at the movie theaters and someone ran up to me and said, "You're Andy's mom." And I said, "Yes, I'm Andy's mom." So Andy was my 4th child. I have 3 older kids, 2 boys in the military, a daughter who's a nurse, and Andy was 16 when he completed suicide. And it's been 6.5 years since he moved to heaven, and it's been a very challenging journey, lots of transformation, lots of growth, lots of pain, and lots of joy and love in the end.
I have 2. I have Chelsea, who passed in 1991. She was only 2 days old, and so she's still just a baby. And Morgan, who passed at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet in 2009. And I feel inspired by both of them. I have 2 beautiful daughters who are here from Earth as well, and a 26 and a 24-year-old, and they keep me moving forward as well. But the nonprofit Helping Parents Heal was actually founded because of Morgan's blessing. And so I feel very grateful to him and to all of the other kids for helping us be able to work and help others through the nonprofit.
Ernie.
Quentin Stone Jackson is our son. He passed away 10 years ago. He transitioned. And he is an old soul. He was an old soul in life. And he impacted everybody while he was here in the physical realm. Always taking care of others, always watching out for us. And he continues to. He was very close with his classmates and his friends. And he's still a part of their lives. They reach out to us every now and then. He opened my eyes to a much, much larger reality. Our son demonstrated to me, a man without religion, he demonstrated to me that we are eternal. And it's pretty impactful when your son transitions, he passes away, and then begins to visit. So he put me on a new path, and that path brought me here today.
Thank you. We hear a lot about you matter, and who better knows about who matters than the four of us, but as well as everyone else that's out there, whether it is work-related. Someone says, the construction workers here drive slow, they matter. Every person that is in existence has a loved one that's out there traveling, so you matter. And I'm going to give this over to LeAnn because that is her big statement of you matter. I want her to explain what that means.
After Andy moved to heaven, we really wanted to make sure that none of his friends followed in his footsteps, that none of our family members, and we're at high risk. The friends are at high risk for following in that path. And so it was a passion for me to make sure that we were present with everybody that was part of Andy's life, because he touched so many people's lives. His nickname was Sunshine. So this was an amazing, bright, happy, positive, influential kid in the community. And that meant we had a lot of kids to be concerned about. And we wanted them to know that God had a plan for them here on the planet, that they had a journey to finish here, that they mattered and they needed to complete the work that they were sent here to do, no matter whether it was tough or not. And we really believed that the simple message of you matter would bridge that connection, and to any just one individual that might feel alone or isolated or be going through challenges or struggles, that if just somebody reached out to them at any given moment, because we never know what's going on in someone's life behind the mask that we wear, that simple phrase, you matter, would make them feel connected to their purpose here on the planet.
Everybody matters, I don't care. If someone says it's a race, it's a profession, always know that you matter. And as LeAnn had mentioned, you don't know what's going on behind all of our masks. We all wear a mask. We have people that are fighting other battles. And this is something that we can't say it's a battle, but it is the emotional, spiritual thing that we deal with every day. So if you're out there and you have lost a loved one, we understand, and we want you to know that you are not alone, even though you may feel that you're alone. And those things that you feel inside, whether it's a butterfly or a hummingbird or a sound or a song or something that reminds you of your loved one, they really are speaking out to you. I believe that.
But it's interesting because as throughout my day, now I take it upon myself. It could be the barista, it could be the valet parker. You never know, but if they do a good job or for some reason, I'm going to tell them, hey, you did a really good job and you matter to me. It's interesting how important that seems to be to someone else, and they begin to open up and they want to tell me what's going on in their life. So it's just a simple little bridge.
It's a nice connection to have. Absolutely. Talking about your loved ones, whether it's a child or a spouse, actually just people that have not had either of those and they have a pet. It's okay. So we want to talk about those. So I want Elizabeth to tell me one of the probably most memorable things about your son that you have to share with everyone.
He was a cheerleader at the University of Arizona, and I loved going down to the games in Arizona, but he also played in Las Vegas at Christmas time in the Frontier Bowl, I believe it is, and that was just such an amazing event. he also, when he was over in China, because one of the reasons that he was in Tibet at the base camp was that he was studying in China, and the pre-Olympic Games were going on, and they were looking for students from the different universities to participate in the pre-Olympic Games. He entered in shot put, and he's 6'6" and 280 pounds, and he won the gold medal, which was very, very exciting. And of course, it was only in the paper in China, but it was so much fun for us to see that. And he was a gregarious, loving, cheerleading kind of guy, and I know that he's cheering all of these kids on the other side as well.
Wouldn't you agree that when we're making memories for our kids, they're actually memories for ourselves, never thinking that we're going to lose our loved one or child especially? People say, I can't imagine. And I want to say, it's my life. It's not something I get to think I can't imagine. It's the walk that I walk, as well as any one of you out there, and as well as us here. Share a story about your son.
Our son has the biggest heart. He's always nurturing everyone. He even nurtured me. There were times he would check in on me, and either if I'm downstairs after a long day of work, stressed out, he'd come down and sit next to me and just be with me. I remember once, early one morning, I was just always working, so I was up early, and he got up to use the restroom and peeked downstairs and looks at me with these sincere eyes. I asked, Dad, are you okay? That's our son. That's Clinton. He would watch over his 6.5-year older sister when Christine, my wife, and I went out on date night. It would just be them, and he would comfort her. So that's kind of the way Clinton rolls.
Great. I'm going to share a story of my daughter Nicole, because this one, I still have it embedded in my brain. So my daughter was a senior at Centennial High School in Peoria, Arizona, and so she likes to do cartwheels and jump around, and she loved to shop. She loved Victoria's Secrets and Jamba Juice and Target. So my story is about Target. We're going through an aisle, and I laugh now because I'm probably going to hear about this when I get to the other side. But it's a story that tickles my heart and makes me laugh on the days that I have. Some days I don't want to cry. I want to cry and not laugh. And we had this connection that no matter where we were, we could pick something out, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, and I'm like, same thing, different color. So that happened at Target with a little extra. She saw a top that I'd already had, but we didn't know that because we went different directions. And I believe she was with her cousin, but I can't recall. She comes from one side of the Target, and I come from the other, and she's like, Mom, look what I got. And I was like, this is the same thing, different color. She's like, oh, watch this. And she decided that she was going to do a cartwheel. But her pants didn't make it. She made the cartwheel, but then there was this horrible rip. And probably 10 shades of red I didn't know could exist in the flesh, because she was very pale white. So that is my story of something that keeps me laughing. And she was my mini-me in many of ways, and I think that's the way that I continue to live my life as I live through my daughter. So that's my story. What story do you have, LeAnn?
You know, it's interesting you said you live through your daughter. I feel like Andy lives through me.
Perhaps that's what I should have said.
I feel, you know, what I knew almost instantly is that I did not want Andy's life to be defined by how he died. Mm-hmm. And I wanted his life to be remembered by how he lived, and the best way for anybody to remember him is through me. And they're going to see Andy through me. They're going to see the sunshine by how I live and what I do, and they're going to recognize him in me. And so I get up every day. Really, my goal is to honor him by continuing to bring the sunshine into the world. He was a bright light while he was here and continues to shine through me. Such a loving, easygoing, and the stories that I know, it's interesting because we all have the stories that we heard after our child passed that we didn't even know about. And I would hear stories of, well, Andy was driving down the road and he saw as we were broken down, and he spun his truck around and came back and had jumper cables in his truck and jumped our vehicle, just had that kind of a soul in him that was always reaching out and wanting to help others, and that's what I want to do.
We talk about the stories of how we met, the stories of the kids, and there's more connections than people really realize. At the time, I was having a hard time in my life, and I was sitting in a parking lot at Barnes & Noble's. And at the time, I was having a big excursion with a picture of my daughter on the back of my vehicle, which I do at every vehicle. So if you see it, that's me. And my plate says, "Remember me," so you can't forget me. And she's not forgotten either, and neither are other children. But the story goes, I'm sitting out there trying to get my own life together, and I never saw LeAnn walk past my vehicle. But to her, she saw me. I didn't know anything about her. But just maybe a few days before that day that she came and crossed my path, or we crossed each other's paths, my son went to the high school. Never even knew her son. But when the story came out, the tragedy of what happened to Andy, my son called me and says, "Mama, there's a student here, and I don't know the details, but he passed away, and everyone's asking me, what do I say, what do I do?" And I said, "Honey, this is now yours, not mine. I'm the mom losing the child. You're the sibling having lost your sister. This is on you." And I think he did okay. I didn't go to school to find out what he did, but he went through it to be able to help his peers, which I think is a hard time. Peers are going through so many different things, and when it comes to tragedy, you either come together or you get separated. And I think that goes with most anything in life. So fast forward, I'm getting ready to actually turn the car on. I don't know how long I've been sitting out there, and I hear, "Excuse me," and I'm like, "Huh? Is that your daughter in the back of your window?" And I was like, "Yes." And it was everything for someone to acknowledge my daughter. And I say that because I know that's how each of us feel. And anyone that's out there, you just want your child or your loved one to be acknowledged, because we live with it every day, not physically, and we find it in every way of our lives, whether it's, like I said, through a song. I'll let her finish telling the rest of the story as to why she said that.
It was really interesting because now I have that same, not your daughter's memorial picture on the back of my truck, but I have one that signifies Andy's passing. And so as I walked into Barnes & Noble, you weren't sitting there when I walked in, but I saw the memorial on the sticker, and I did that quick calculation. Her name's Nicole. How old is she? She was a child. And it struck me, and so it was that common chord, that common bond. When I came back out and you were sitting there with your door open, and I walked past you and I went, "No, I don't know why, but I gotta go back." I turned around and I said, "Are you Nicole's mom?"
Okay.
And you said, "I gotta go now."
I don't know what I was. I know I wasn't ready
We
to
talked and it connected us.
We gave a hug right away when you had told me, and the connection of her being her son that I just shared about my son and the student didn't connect for a few days, and that's when I was like, wow. So that is where I feel that there's a connection in so many ways, spiritually and physically. And so whenever you talk about your loved one, please always say their name. And if someone's lost a loved one, there's a lot of division that happens. Don't let that happen, because that is the most important thing in a person's life. You want to acknowledge that person. You want to know that you do matter. And so, does anyone want to share anything else about your childhood?
Well, I was just going to say along the same lines that I think people are afraid if they bring our kids' names up that it will make us sad. Because maybe we've forgotten that we had a child pass, but we think about it 24 hours a day. So when we hear someone acknowledging them and saying their name, it is so wonderful for us. And if we cry, it's tears of joy. It has nothing to do with tears of sadness. So yes, I just think that's beautiful that you were so happy to be able to talk to me.
And that's how you two met. LeAnn and I got involved with something, and then Elizabeth, and then Ernie. So did you want to share anything else as far as your son, his memory, or an experience that we just talked about? Connections are everything, especially when it comes to our children.
I alluded to earlier when Quentin opened my eyes up to a much larger reality. Quentin's signs that he shared with me were just incredible. And that's, for me, that's where the rubber meets the road. 30 hours after he transitioned, I'm alone in a room, and I realized my hand's being held. And I mean, I was very much aware and trying to understand why my hand was being held. It took me some time to realize it, but then I realized it was my son. And somebody asked me, well, how do you know, Ernie? My son has the softest hands. We used to always walk hand in hand. We all held his hands. And he knew that even me, all slow, dense Ernie, but figured out eventually that my son was holding my hand 30 hours after he transitioned. That's a conversation I'll have all day long in front of anybody. It's the good stuff.
I have a similar story. So my daughter passed away on New Year's Day 2007, and then 3 months later, it's Easter. It was at the end of March. Well, my daughter's birthday is March 28th. And at that time, I was gung-ho and so confused about what I'm supposed to feel at the same time. My life fell apart in so many ways. But we were, as a family, we were out at the back roads of Lake Pleasant, and I got into an accident that should have taken my left arm. So I have some scars and some screws and sometimes some loose screws, but these one are intact. And I had had a surgery, extensive surgery, to make sure I didn't lose my arm, which, by the way, I have it, and I'm very, very glad. I thought I was dreaming, and I heard a nurse say, Christine, Christine. I said, I woke up, I was pouring tears. Are you okay? Because that's their job, to make sure you're going to be okay. And in mine was a vision, or the feeling, the hand being held. And my daughter, I still remember it very clearly, because I went in on this mindset that your mind is the most powerful thing you can possess, correct? Yeah. So not thinking that I have my son to take care of, I was only focused on the loss of my daughter and where I was at. That I was going to tell my mind that I'm done. I'm going to pass away in the surgery, it'll be easy and painless, and that's all I had to focus on. But that's obviously not what took place. And I remember my daughter, in whatever you want to call it, saying, Mom, it's not your time. It's not your time. Which is probably I was bawling, because in my pain, I wanted it to be my time. But it was selfish because I had my son and other things that should led me to meet the people I am and to have other things that I have in my life. So I do believe in that, very much so. And she says to me, Mama, Austin, which is my son, and Dad still need you. And because it's now been 12 and a half years, I see why that was said. I don't think these things can be made up. I do believe that our lives are destined, and my daughter is in heaven. And she's always here reminding me that she's ground.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is.
That's good stuff.
Any others?
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say that when Morgan passed at the base camp of Mount Everest, I was so fortunate because, in spite of the fact that I was thousands of miles away, I was able to speak to his roommate who put his phone up to his ear. And he wasn't breathing, he was undergoing CPR, and I told him that we loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And at that instant, I felt him hug me, and I was in Cave Creek, Arizona, and he was over at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet, but I knew it was him. And at that very moment, I knew that this isn't it, and that he was going to be with me for the rest of my life. And so that was something that was incredibly healing to me, very similar to Ernie's hand being held, very similar to your daughter speaking to you when you're under anesthesia. And I know that LeAnn is also going to experience the same thing.
You know, I really needed to define better, having been all my life as a born-again Christian. To me, heaven, we're comfortable being okay that heaven is someplace off that we're all going to go to, and that was enough. But when your child is there, you want to know, and so I read a lot of books. I wanted to know what my kid is doing, and how is he, and is he okay, and especially for a child that passes by suicide. There's a lot of controversy over there. There's people that say that, well, that's a sin and he's not in heaven. So that was a tremendous fear for me initially. So researching that and going back and reading and relying upon my faith walk, there are two things that Andy did right off the bat. And one of them was in the middle of the night, I sat straight up in bed and I said, "What?" Because I heard him go, "Mom." And I was like, and when I sat up and I said, "What?" It was clear as bell that he was there talking to me. And I'm like, I don't like being woken up in the middle of the night. And so I went back to sleep. And then I got a phone call from him another time. So the signs are really important, the validation that our kids are okay. That really helps in our healing, to really know that, understand that without a doubt.
But going back to Ernie, his story of forgiveness, right, when that accident happened, is just so amazing. And maybe you could just say a little bit about that, because I feel like that was a turning point in your life, but it's also something that's made you such an incredible healer to other people now.
No, it definitely was. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't have religion. I hadn't read the New Testament. I hadn't read the red print. At the accident scene, it was pretty tough. Quentin was taking his last breaths in my arm, and the person that caused the accident took us out, driven off the road, and walked back to the accident scene. And she took it all in, and it horrified her what she was responsible for from a worldly perspective. And she found her way over in front of Quentin and I looked up at her, still got Quentin, still cradling him, and she looked down at us, and I was right in her soul. I saw her pain. I saw her suffering in a heartbeat, and I wanted to take that from her. I mean, our son is transitioning right in my arms, but when I saw her pain, I wanted to take it from her. I didn't want her. And again, maybe that's being human, but in that second, I just forgave her. I just didn't want her to suffer.
Thank you, Ernie. We've run out of time for right now, and we will be back. I just want to share that whatever your feelings are, whatever your losses are, they're valid. It's okay to feel like you're alone, but you're truly not alone. We will be back and talk more about stories of hope. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.